Go game.
Go is a board game for two players that originated in China more than 2,500 years ago. The game is rich in strategy despite its relatively simple rules. The two players alternately place black and white playing pieces, called stones, on the vacant intersections, called points of a grid of 19x19 lines. Beginners often play on smaller 9x9 and 13x13 boards. The object of the game is to use one's stones to surround a larger total area of the board than the opponent. Once placed on the board, stones may not be moved, but stones are removed from the board if captured. This is done by surrounding an opposing stone or group of stones by occupying all orthogonally adjacent points. Players continue in this fashion until neither player wishes to make another move. The game has no set ending conditions. When a game concludes, the control points, territory, are counted along with captured stones and komi to determine who has more points. Games may also be won by resignation. Go originated in ancient China. Archaeological evidence shows that the early game was played on a board with a 17x17 grid, but by the time the game had spread to Korea and Japan, in about the 5th and 7th centuries AD respectively, boards with a 19x19 grid had become standard. As of mid-2008 there were well over 40 million Go players worldwide, the overwhelming majority living in East Asia. As of May 2012, the International Go Federation has a total of 74 member countries and 4 association members covering multiple countries.
Overview.
Go is an adversarial game with the objective of surrounding more territory than one's opponent. As the game progresses, the board gets divided up into areas of territory, as outlined by groups of stones. These areas are then contested in local battles, which are often complicated, and may result in the expansion, reduction, or wholesale capture and loss of the contested area. It is often the case that a certain kind of trade goes on, where a player's loss in one part of the board can be compensated for or mitigated by a gain in another part of the board. A basic principle of Go is that stones must have at least one liberty, Chinese, key, to remain on the board. A liberty is an open point, intersection, next to a stone. An enclosed liberty, or liberties, is called an eye, yan, and a group of stones with at least 2 separate eyes is said to be unconditionally alive. Such groups cannot be captured, even if surrounded. Dead stones are stones that are surrounded and in groups with poor shape, one or no eyes, and thus cannot resist eventual capture. The general strategy of Go is to expand one's territory where possible, attack the opponent's weak groups, groups that can possibly be killed, and always stay mindful of the life status of one's own groups. The liberties of groups are countable. Situations where 2 opposing groups must capture the other to live are called capturing races, sema in Japanese. In a capturing race, the group with more liberties, and/or better shape will ultimately be able to capture the opponent's stones. Capturing races and questions of life and death are examples of what makes Go challenging. The game ends when both players pass, and players pass when there are no more profitable moves to be made. The game is then scored, the player with the greater number of controlled, surrounded, points, factoring in the number of captured stones and komi, wins the game. Games may also be won by resignation, for example if a player has lost a large group of stones.
Finer points.
In the opening stages of the game, players typically establish positions, or bases in the corners and around the sides of the board. These bases help to quickly develop living shapes and surround territory. Players usually start in the corners, because it is more efficient there to make life and to establish territory. Established corner opening sequences are called josuke, Japanese, dingshi, or junsuk, in Korean, and are often studied independently. Turumyu, pronounced, neutral points are points that lie in between the boundary walls of black and white, and as such are considered to be of no value to either side. Seki, Chinese, gonghuo, are mutually alive pairs of white and black groups where neither has 2 eyes. Ako, Chinese and Japanese, jai, is a repeated position shape that may be contested by making forcing moves elsewhere. After the forcing move is played, the ko may be taken back, and returned to its original position. Some ko fights may be important and decide the life of a large group, while others may be worth just 1 or 2 points. Some ko fights are referred to as picnic kos, when only one side has a lot to lose. The Japanese call it a hanami, flower viewing, ko. Playing with others usually requires a knowledge of each player's strength, as indicated by their rank: 30 kaya 1 dan 6 dan 1 dan pro 9 dan pro. Handicaps can be given if there is a difference in rank. Black is allowed to place 2 or more stones on the board to compensate for white's greater strength. There are different rule sets, Japanese, Chinese, AGA, etc., which are almost entirely equivalent, except for certain special case positions.
Game theory.
In formal game theory terms, Go is a non-chance, combinatorial game with perfect information. Informally, that means there are no dice used, and decisions or moves create discrete outcome vectors rather than probability distributions. The underlying math is combinatorial. And all moves, via single vertex analysis, are visible to both players, unlike some card games where some information is hidden. Perfect information also implies sequence. Players can theoretically know about all past moves. Other game theoretical taxonomy elements include the fact that Go is finitely bounded, strictly speaking, because our lifetimes are finite. The strategy is associative. Every strategy is a function of board position. Format is non-cooperative, not a team sport. Positions are extensible, can be represented by board position trees. Game is zero-sum, player choices do not increase resources available colloquially, rewards in the game are fixed, and if one player wins, the other loses, and the utility function is restricted, in the sense of win-lose. However, ratings, monetary rewards, national and personal pride and other factors can extend utility functions, but generally not to the extent of removing the win-lose restriction. Affine transformations are beyond the scope of this article, but they can theoretically add non-zero and complex utility aspects even to two-player games. See the Mashlow reference on Go Chess that follows here, pages 111.
Rules.
Aside from the order of play, alternating moves, black moves first or takes a handicap, and scoring rules, there are essentially only 2 rules in Go. Rule 1, the rule of liberty, states that every stone remaining on the board must have at least one open point, an intersection, called a liberty directly next to it, up, down, left, or right, or must be part of a connected group that has at least one such open point, liberty next to it. Stones or groups of stones which lose their last liberty are removed from the board. Rule 2, the co-rule states that the stones on the board must never repeat a previous position of stones. Moves which would do so are forbidden, and thus only moves elsewhere on the board are permitted the turn. Almost all other information about how the game is played is a heuristic, meaning it is learned information about how the game is played, rather than a rule. Other rules are specialized, as they come about through different rule sets, but the above 2 rules cover almost all of any played game. Although there are some minor differences between rule sets used in different countries, most notably in Chinese and Japanese scoring rules, these differences do not greatly affect the tactics and strategy of the game. Except where noted otherwise, the basic rules presented here are valid independent of the scoring rules used. The scoring rules are explained separately. Go terms for which there are no ready English equivalent are commonly called by their Japanese names.
Basic rules.
2 players, black and white, take turns placing a stone, game piece, of their own color on a vacant point, intersection, of the grid on a Go board. Black moves first. If there is a large difference in skill between the players, black is typically allowed to place 2 or more stones on the board to compensate for the difference. See Go handicaps. The official grid comprises 19x19 lines, though the rules can be applied to any grid size. 13x13 and 9x9 boards are popular choices to teach beginners. Once placed, a stone may not be moved to a different point. Vertically and horizontally adjacent stones of the same color form a chain, also called a string or group, that cannot subsequently be subdivided and, in effect, becomes a single larger stone. Only stones connected to one another by the lines on the board create a chain. Stones that are diagonally adjacent are not connected. Chains may be expanded by placing additional stones on adjacent intersections, and can be connected together by placing a stone on an intersection that is adjacent to two or more chains of the same color. A vacant point adjacent to a stone is called a liberty for that stone. Stones in a chain share their liberties. A chain of stones must have at least one liberty to remain on the board. When a chain is surrounded by opposing stones so that it has no liberties, it is captured and removed from the board.
The co-rule.
Players are not allowed to make a move that returns the game to the previous position. This rule, called the ko-rule, Chinese, Jai, Japanese, Jai Koeon, Korean, P, prevents unending repetition. As shown in the example pictured to the right, black has just played the stone marked 1, capturing a white stone at the intersection marked with a circle. If white were now allowed to play on the marked intersection, that move would capture the black stone marked 1 and recreate the situation before black made the move marked 1. Allowing this could result in an unending cycle of captures by both players. The ko-rule therefore prohibits white from playing at the marked intersection immediately. Instead, white must play elsewhere, or pass. Black can then end the ko by filling at the marked intersection, creating a 5-stone black chain. If white wants to continue the ko, that specific repeating position, white tries to find a play elsewhere on the board that black must answer. If black answers, then white can retake the ko. A repetition of such exchanges is called a ko-fight. While the various rule sets agree on the ko-rule prohibiting returning the board to an immediately previous position, they deal in different ways with the relatively uncommon situation in which a player might recreate a past position that is further removed. See Rules of Go, repetition for further information.
Passing.
Instead of placing a stone, a player may pass. This usually occurs when they believe no useful moves remain. When both players pass consecutively, the game ends and is then scored.
Playing stones with no liberties.
A player may not place a stone such that it or its group immediately has no liberties, unless doing so immediately deprives an enemy group of its final liberty. In the latter case, the enemy group is captured, leaving the new stone with at least one liberty. This rule is responsible for the all-important difference between 1 and 2 eyes. If a group with only one eye is fully surrounded on the outside, it can be killed with a stone placed in its single eye. The Ing and New Zealand rules don't have this rule, and there a player might destroy one of its own groups, commit suicide. This play would only be useful in a limited set of situations involving a small interior space.
Komi.
Because black has the advantage of playing the first move, the idea of awarding white some compensation came into being during the 20th century. On a 19x19 goban, this predetermined compensation, called kimadashi, komi, means that white may receive say 6.5 points compensation for black's first move advantage. If there is one stone, rank, difference in strength between players, the stronger player takes white, and white may receive only 0.5 points komi, to break a possible tie, jiago. In handicap games with 2 or more handicap stones, white may also take 0.5 points komi to break a tie, but it is more common that there is no komi.
Scoring rules.
2 general types of scoring system are used, and players determine which to use before play. Both systems almost always give the same result. Territory scoring counts the number of empty points a player's stones surround, together with the number of stones he captured. While it originated in China, today it is commonly associated with Japan and Korea. Area scoring counts the number of points your stones occupy and surround. It is associated with contemporary Chinese play and was probably established there during the Ming Dynasty in the 15th or 16th century.
Detailed description.
After both players have passed consecutively, the stones that are still on the board but unable to avoid capture, called dead stones, are removed. Area scoring, including Chinese, a player's score is the number of stones he has on the board, plus the number of empty intersections surrounded by that player's stones. Territory scoring, including Japanese and Korean, in the course of the game, each player retains the stones they capture, termed prisoners. Any dead stones removed at the end of the game become prisoners. The score is the number of empty points enclosed by a player's stones, plus the number of prisoners captured by that player. If there is disagreement about which stones are dead, then under area scoring rules, the players simply resume play to resolve the matter. The score is computed using the position after the next time the players pass consecutively. Under territory scoring, the rules are considerably more complex. However, in practice, players generally play on, and, once the status of each stone has been determined, return to the position at the time the first two consecutive passes occurred and remove the dead stones. For further information, see Rules of Go. Given that the number of stones a player has on the board is directly related to the number of prisoners their opponent has taken, the resulting net score, that is the difference between blacks and white scores, is identical under both rule sets, unless the players have passed different numbers of times during the course of the game. Thus, the net result given by the two scoring systems rarely differs by more than a point.
Life and death.
While not actually mentioned in the Rules of Go, at least in simpler rule sets, such as those of New Zealand and the US, the concept of a living group of stones is necessary for a practical understanding of the game. When a group of stones is mostly surrounded and has no options to connect with friendly stones elsewhere, the status of the group is either alive, dead or unsettled. A group of stones is said to be alive if it cannot be captured, even if the opponent is allowed to move first. Conversely, a group of stones is said to be dead if it cannot avoid capture, even if the owner of the group is allowed the first move. Otherwise, the group is said to be unsettled. In such a situation, the player that moves first may be able to either make it alive if he is the owner, or kill it if he is the group owner's opponent. To be alive, a group must be able to create at least two eyes if threatened. An eye is an empty point that is surrounded by friendly stones, where the opponent can never play due to the suicide rule. If two such eyes exist, the opponent can never capture a group of stones, because it always has at least two liberties. One eye is not enough for life, because a point that would normally be suicide may be played upon if doing so fills the last liberty of opposing stones, thereby capturing those stones. In the examples of eyes diagram, all the circled points are eyes. The two black groups in the upper corners are alive, as both have at least two eyes. The groups in the lower corners are dead, as both have only one eye. The group in the lower left may seem to have two eyes, but the surrounded empty point marked A is not actually an eye. White can play there and take a black stone. Such a point is often called a false eye.
Seki mutual life.
There is an exception to the requirement that a group must have two eyes to be alive, a situation called seki, or mutual life. Where different colored groups are adjacent and share liberties, the situation may reach a position when neither player wants to move first, because doing so would allow the opponent to capture. In such situations therefore both players' stones remain on the board in mutual life or seki. Neither player receives any points for those groups, but at least those groups themselves remain living, as opposed to being captured. Seki can occur in many ways. The simplest are, 1, each player has a group without eyes and they share two liberties, and, 2, each player has a group with one eye and they share one more liberty. In the example of seki, mutual life, diagram, the circled points are liberties shared by both a black and a white group. Neither player wants to play on a circled point, because doing so would allow the opponent to capture. All the other groups in this example, both black and white, are alive with at least two eyes. Seki is unusual, but can result from an attempt by one player to invade and kill a nearly settled group of the other player.
Tactics.
In Go, Tactics deal with immediate fighting between stones, capturing and saving stones, life, death and other issues localized to a specific part of the board. Larger issues, not limited to only part of the board, are referred to as strategy, and are covered in their own section.
Capturing tactics.
There are several tactical constructs aimed at capturing stones. These are among the first things a player learns after understanding the rules. Recognizing the possibility that stones can be captured using these techniques is an important step forward. The most basic technique is the ladder. To capture stones in a ladder, a player uses a constant series of captured threats, called Atari, to force the opponent into a zigzag pattern as shown in the diagram to the right. Unless the pattern runs into friendly stones along the way, the stones in the ladder cannot avoid capture. Experienced players recognize the futility of continuing the pattern and play elsewhere. The presence of a ladder on the board does give a player the option to play a stone in the path of the ladder, thereby threatening to rescue their stones, forcing a response. Such a move is called a ladder breaker and may be a powerful strategic move. In the diagram, black has the option of playing a ladder breaker. Another technique to capture stones is the so-called net, also known by its Japanese name, gita. This refers to a move that loosely surrounds some stones, preventing their escape in all directions. An example is given in the diagram to the left. It is generally better to capture stones in a net than in a ladder, because a net does not depend on the condition that there are no opposing stones in the way, nor does it allow the opponent to play a strategic ladder breaker. A third technique to capture stones is the snapback. In a snapback, one player allows a single stone to be captured, then immediately plays on the point formerly occupied by that stone. By so doing, the player captures a larger group of their opponent's stones, in effect snapping back at those stones. An example can be seen on the right. As with the ladder, an experienced player does not play out such a sequence, recognizing the futility of capturing only to be captured back immediately.
Reading ahead.
One of the most important skills required for strong tactical play is the ability to read ahead. Reading ahead includes considering available moves to play, the possible responses to each move, and the subsequent possibilities after each of those responses. Some of the strongest players of the game can read up to 40 moves ahead even in complicated positions. As explained in the scoring rules, some stone formations can never be captured and are said to be alive, while other stones may be in the position where they cannot avoid being captured and are said to be dead. Much of the practice material available to students of the game comes in the form of life and death problems, also known as Tsume-go. In such problems, players are challenged to find the vital move sequence that kills a group of the opponent or saves a group of their own. Tsume-go are considered an excellent way to train a player's ability at reading ahead, and are available for all skill levels, some posing a challenge even to top players.
Co-fighting.
In situations when the co-rule applies, a co-fight may occur. If the player who is prohibited from capture is of the opinion that the capture is important, because it prevents a large group of stones from being captured for instance, the player may play a co-threat. This is a move elsewhere on the board that threatens to make a large profit if the opponent does not respond. If the opponent does respond to the co-threat, the situation on the board has changed, and the prohibition on capturing the co no longer applies. Thus the player who made the co-threat may now recapture the co. Their opponent is then in the same situation and can either play a co-threat as well, or concede the co by simply playing elsewhere. If a player concedes the co either because they do not think it important or because there are no moves left that could function as a co-threat, they have lost the co, and their opponent may connect the co. Instead of responding to a co-threat, a player may also choose to ignore the threat and connect the co. They thereby win the co, but at a cost. The choice of when to respond to a threat and when to ignore it is a subtle one, which requires a player to consider many factors, including how much is gained by connecting, how much is lost by not responding, how many possible co-threats both players have remaining, what the optimal order of playing them is, and what the size, points lost or gained, of each of the remaining threats is. Frequently, the winner of the co-fight does not connect the co but instead captures one of the chains that constituted their opponent's side of the co. In some cases, this leads to another co-fight at a neighboring location.
Strategy.
Strategy deals with global influence, interaction between distant stones, keeping the whole board in mind during local fights, and other issues that involve the overall game. It is therefore possible to allow a tactical loss when it confers a strategic advantage. Go is not easy to play well. With each new level comes a deeper appreciation for the subtlety and nuances involved and for the insight of stronger players. The acquisition of major concepts of the game comes slowly. Novices often start by randomly placing stones on the board, as if it were a game of chance. They inevitably lose to experienced players who know how to create effective formations. An understanding of how stones connect for greater power develops, and then a few basic common opening sequences may be understood. Learning the ways of life and death helps in a fundamental way to develop one's strategic understanding of weak groups. It is necessary to play thousands of games before one can get close to one's ultimate potential skill level in Go. A player who both plays aggressively and can handle adversity is said to display Kai, or fighting spirit, in the game. Familiarity with the board shows first the tactical importance of the edges, and then the efficiency of developing in the corners first, then sides, then center. The more advanced beginner understands that territory and influence are somewhat interchangeable, but there needs to be a balance. This intricate struggle of power and control makes the game highly dynamic.
Basic concepts.
Basic strategic aspects include the following. Connection. Keeping one's own stones connected means that fewer groups need to make living shape, and one has fewer groups to defend. Cut. Keeping opposing stones disconnected means that the opponent needs to defend and make living shape for more groups. Stay alive. The simplest way to stay alive is to establish a foothold in the corner or along one of the sides. At a minimum, a group must have two eyes, separate open points, to be alive. An opponent cannot fill in either eye, as any such move is suicidal and prohibited in the rules. Mutual life, Seki, is better than dying, a situation in which neither player can play on a particular point without then allowing the other player to play at another point to capture. The most common example is that of adjacent groups that share their last few liberties. If either player plays in the shared liberties, they can reduce their own group to a single liberty, putting themselves in Atari, allowing their opponent to capture it on the next move. Death, a group that lacks living shape, meaning one with fewer than two eyes, is eventually removed from the board as captured. Invasion, set up a new living group inside an area where the opponent has greater influence, means one reduces the opponent's score in proportion to the area one occupies. Reduction, placing a stone far enough into the opponent's area of influence to reduce the amount of territory they eventually get, but not so far in that it can be cut off from friendly stones outside. Scent, a play that forces one's opponent to respond. Goat, such as placing an opponent's group in Atari, immediate danger of capture. A player who can regularly play Scent has the initiative, as in chess, and can control the flow of the game. Sacrifice, allowing a group to die in order to carry out a play, or plan, in a more important area. The strategy involved can become very abstract and complex. High-level players spend years improving their understanding of strategy, and a novice may play many hundreds of games against opponents before being able to win regularly.
Opening strategy.
In the opening of the game, players usually play in the corners of the board first, as the presence of two edges make it easier for them to surround territory and establish their stones. After the corners, focus moves to the sides, where there is still one edge to support a player's stones. Opening moves are generally on the third and fourth line from the edge, with occasional moves on the second and fifth lines. In general, stones on the third line offer stability and are good defensive moves, whereas stones on the fourth line influence more of the board and are good attacking moves. The opening is the most difficult part of the game for professional players and takes a disproportionate amount of the playing time. In the opening, Players often play established sequences called joseki, which are locally balanced exchanges. However, the joseki chosen should also produce a satisfactory result on a global scale. It is generally advisable to keep a balance between territory and influence. Which of these gets precedence is often a matter of individual taste.
Phases of the game.
While the opening moves in a game have a distinct set of aims, they usually make up only 10% to at most 20% of the game. In other words, in a game of 250 moves, there may be around 30 or so opening moves, with limited fighting. At the end of such a game, around the last 100 moves are considered the end game, in which territories are finished off definitively and all issues on capturing stones become clear. The middle phase of the game is the most combative, and usually lasts for more than 100 moves. During the middle game, or just the fighting, the players invade each other's frameworks, and attack weak groups, formations that lack the necessary two eyes for viability. Such groups must run away, that is, expand to avoid enclosure, giving a dynamic feeling to the struggle. It is possible that one player may succeed in capturing a large weak group of the opponents, which often proves decisive and ends the game by a resignation. However, matters may be more complex yet, with major trade-offs, apparently dead groups reviving, and skillful play to attack in such a way as to construct territories rather than kill. The end of the middle game and transition to the end game is marked by a few features. The game breaks up into areas that do not affect each other, with a caveat about co-fights, where before the central area of the board related to all parts of it. No large weak groups are still in serious danger. Moves can reasonably be attributed some definite value, such as 20 points or fewer, rather than simply being necessary to compete. Both players set limited objectives in their plans, in making or destroying territory, capturing or saving stones. These changing aspects of the game usually occur at much the same time, for strong players. In brief, the middle game switches into the endgame when the concepts of strategy and influence need reassessment in terms of concrete final results on the board.
History. Origin in China.
The earliest written reference to the game is generally recognized as the historical annal Zuozuan, c. 4th century BC, referring to a historical event of 548 BC. It is also mentioned in Book 17 of the Analects of Confucius and in two books written by Mencius, c. 3rd century BC. In all of these works, the game is referred to as Yi. Today, in China, it is known as Weiqi, simplified Chinese, Weiqi. Traditional Chinese, Weiqi. Pinyin, Weiqi. Wade Giles, Weiqi, literally the encirclement board game. Go was originally played on a 17x17 line grid, but a 19x19 grid became standard by the time of the Tang dynasty, 618 to 907. Legends trace the origin of the game to Chinese Emperor Yao, 2337-2258 BC, said to have had his counselors Shun design it for his unruly son, Dansu, to favorably influence him. Other theories suggest that the game was derived from Chinese tribal warlords and generals, who used pieces of stone to map out attacking positions. In China, Go was considered one of the four cultivated arts of the Chinese scholar gentleman, along with calligraphy, painting and playing the musical instrument guzheng.
Spread to Korea and Japan.
Weiqi was introduced to Korea sometime between the 5th and 7th centuries CE, and was popular among the higher classes. In Korea, the game is called Bajuk, Hangul, Baduk, and a variant of the game called Sanjang Bajuk was developed by the 16th century. Sanjang Bajuk became the main variant played in Korea until the end of the 19th century. The game reached Japan in the 7th century CE, where it is called Go, Ki, or Igo, Weiqi. The game became popular at the Japanese imperial court in the 8th century, and among the general public by the 13th century. In 1603, Tokugawa Ieyasu re-established Japan's unified national government. In the same year, he assigned the then best player in Japan, a Buddhist monk named Nikai, Nikano Yosaburo, 1559, to the post of Godokoro, Minister of Go. Nikai took the name Oninbo Sansa and founded the Oninbo Go School. Several competing schools were founded soon after. These officially recognized and subsidized Go schools greatly developed the level of play and introduced the Dan Kaya style system of ranking players. Players from the four schools, Oninbo, Yasui, Anu and Hayashi, competed in the annual Castle Games, played in the presence of the shogun.
Go in the West.
Despite its widespread popularity in East Asia, Go has been slow to spread to the rest of the world. Although there are some mentions of the game in Western literature from the 16th century forward, Go did not start to become popular in the West until the end of the 19th century, when German scientist Oskar Kaskelt wrote a treatise on the game. By the early 20th century, Go had spread throughout the German and Austro-Hungarian empires. In 1905, Edward Lasker learned the game while in Berlin. When he moved to New York, Lasker founded the New York Go Club together with, amongst others, Arthur Smith, who had learned of the game while touring the East and had published the book The Game of Go in 1908. Lasker's book Go and Go Mokyu, 1934, helped spread the game throughout the U.S., and in 1935, the American Go Association was formed. 2 years later, in 1937, the German Go Association was founded. World War II put a stop to most Go activity, but after the war, Go continued to spread. For most of the 20th century, the Japan Go Association, Nihon played a leading role in spreading Go outside East Asia by publishing the English-language magazine Go Review in the 1960s. Establishing Go centers in the US, Europe and South America. And often sending professional teachers on tour to Western nations. Internationally, the game is now commonly known by its shortened Japanese name, and terms for common Go concepts are derived from their Japanese pronunciation. In 1996, NASA astronaut Daniel Barry and Japanese astronaut Koichi Wakata became the first people to play Go in space. They used a special Go set, which was named Go Space, designed by Ichung Wilson Chow. Both astronauts were awarded honorary Dan ranks by the Nihon Ki-in. As of May 2012, the International Go Federation has 57 member countries outside Asia.
Competitive play. Ranks and ratings.
In Go, rank indicates a player's skill in the game. Traditionally, ranks are measured using Kaya and Dan grades, a system also adopted by many martial arts. More recently, mathematical rating systems similar to the ELO rating system have been introduced. Such rating systems often provide a mechanism for converting a rating to a Kaya or Dan grade. Kaya grades, abbreviated K, are considered student grades and decrease as playing level increases, meaning first Kaya is the strongest available Kaya grade. Dan grades, abbreviated D, are considered master grades, and increase from first Dan to seventh Dan. First Dan equals a black belt in Eastern martial arts using this system. The difference among each amateur rank is 1 handicap stone. For example, if a 5K plays a game with a 1K, the 5K would need a handicap of 4 stones to even the odds. Top-level amateur players sometimes defeat professionals in tournament play. Professional players have professional Dan ranks, abbreviated P. These ranks are separate from amateur ranks. The rank system comprises, from the lowest to highest ranks.
Tournament and match rules.
Tournament and match rules deal with factors that may influence the game but are not part of the actual rules of play. Such rules may differ between events. Rules that influence the game include, the setting of compensation points, komi, handicap, and time control parameters. Rules that do not generally influence the game are, the tournament system, pairing strategies, and placement criteria. Common tournament systems used in Go include the McMahon system, Swiss system, league systems and the knockout system. Tournaments may combine multiple systems. Many professional Go tournaments use a combination of the league and knockout systems. Tournament rules may also set the following. Compensation points, called komi, which compensate the second player for the first move advantage of his opponent. Tournaments commonly use a compensation in the range of 5 to 8 points, generally including a half point to prevent draws. Compensation stones placed on the board before alternate play, allowing players of different strengths to play competitively. See Go Handicap for more information. And Superco. Although the basic Ko rule described above covers more than 95% of all cycles occurring in games, there are some complex situations, triple Ko, eternal life, etc., that are not covered by it but would allow the game to cycle indefinitely. To prevent this, the Ko rule is sometimes extended to disallow the repetition of any previous position. This extension is called Superco.
Top players.
Although the game was developed in China, the establishment of the four Go houses by Tokugawa Ieyasu at the start of the 17th century shifted the focus of the Go world to Japan. State sponsorship, allowing players to dedicate themselves full-time to study of the game, and fierce competition between individual houses resulted in a significant increase in the level of play. During this period, the best player of his generation was given the prestigious title Myojin, Master, and the post of Godokoro, Minister of Go. Of special note are the players who were dubbed Kisei, Go Sage. The only three players to receive this honor were Dozaku, Jawa and Shusaku, all of the house Oninbo. After the end of the Tokugawa shogunate and the Meiji Restoration period, the Go houses slowly disappeared, and in 1924, the Nihon Ki-in, Japanese Go Association, was formed. Top players from this period often played newspaper-sponsored matches of 2 to 10 games. Of special note are the Chinese-born player Go Seijin, Chinese, Wu Kengyuan, who scored an impressive 80% in these matches, and Minoru Katani, who dominated matches in the early 1930s. These two players are also recognized for their groundbreaking work on new opening theory, Shinfusuki. For much of the 20th century, Go continued to be dominated by players trained in Japan. Notable names included Ario Sakata, Rin Kyo, born in China, Mijao Kato, Koichi Kobayashi and Cho Chikun, born Cho Chihun, South Korea. Top Chinese and Korean talents often moved to Japan, because the level of play there was high and funding was more lavish. One of the first Korean players to do so was Cho Nam-kul, who studied in the Kitani Dojo 1937 to 1944. After his return to Korea, the Honjukwon, Korea Bajuk Association, was formed and caused the level of play in South Korea to rise significantly in the second half of the 20th century. In China, the game declined during the Cultural Revolution, 1966 to 1976, but quickly recovered in the last quarter of the 20th century, bringing Chinese players, such as Nai Weiping and Mark Xiaoshun, on par with their Japanese and Korean counterparts. With the advent of major international titles from 1989 onward, it became possible to compare the level of players from different countries more accurately. Korean players such as Lee Chang-ho, Cho Hun-hyun, Lee Stoll and Yu Chang-gyuk dominated international Go and won an impressive number of titles. Several Chinese players also rose to the top in international Go, most notably Mark Xiaoshun, Chang Hao and Guy Lee. As of 2013, Japan lags behind in the international Go scene. Historically, as with most sports and games, more men than women have played Go. Special tournaments for women exist, but until recently, men and women did not compete together at the highest levels. However, the creation of new, open tournaments and the rise of strong female players, most notably Roina Wu, have in recent years highlighted the strength and competitiveness of emerging female players. The level in other countries has traditionally been much lower, except for some players who had preparatory professional training in Asia. Knowledge of the game has been scant elsewhere up until the 20th century. A famous player of the 1920s was Edward Lasker. It was not until the 1950s that more than a few Western players took up the game as other than a passing interest. In 1978, Manfred Wimmer became the first Westerner to receive a professional player's certificate from an Asian Professional Go Association. In 2000, a Westerner, Michael Redmond, finally achieved the top rank awarded by an Asian Go Association, 9 Dan. In total, as of 2008, only 9 non-Asian Go players have ever achieved professional status in Asian associations.
Equipment.
It is possible to play Go with a simple paper board and coins or plastic tokens for the stones. More popular mid-range equipment includes cardstock, a laminated particle board, or wood boards with stones of plastic or glass. More expensive traditional materials are still used by many players. The most expensive Go sets are black stones carved from slate and white stones carved from translucent white shells, played on boards carved in a single piece from the trunk of a tree.
Traditional equipment. Boards.
The Go board, generally referred to by its Chinese name Goban, Kipan, typically measures between 45 and 48 centimeters, 18 and 19 inches, in length, from one player's side to the other, and 42 to 44 centimeters, 17 to 17 in width. Chinese boards are slightly larger, as a traditional Chinese Go stone is slightly larger to match. The board is not square. There is a 15 to 14 ratio in length to width, because with a perfectly square board, from the player's viewing angle the perspective creates a foreshortening of the board. The added length compensates for this. There are 2 main types of boards, a table board similar in most respects to other gammaboards like that used for chess, and a floor board, which is its own freestanding table and at which the players sit. The traditional Japanese goban is between 10 and 18 centimeters, 3.9 and 7.1 in, thick and has legs. It sits on the floor, see picture to right. It is preferably made from the rare golden-tinged ka tree, Torreya nucifera, with the very best made from ka trees up to 700 years old. More recently, the related California Torreya, Torreya californica, has been prized for its light color and pale rings as well as its reduced expense and more readily available stock. The natural resources of Japan have been unable to keep up with the enormous demand for the slow-growing ka trees. Both T. nucifera and T. californica take many hundreds of years to grow to the necessary size, and they are now extremely rare, raising the price of such equipment tremendously. As ka trees are a protected species in Japan, they cannot be harvested until they have died. Thus, an old-growth, floor-standing ka goban can easily cost in excess of $10,000 with the highest quality examples costing more than $60,000. Other, less expensive woods often used to make quality table boards in both Chinese and Japanese dimensions include heba, Phajopsis dolibrata, katsura, Cercidiphyllum japonicum, kori, agathis, and shinkawa, various varieties of spruce, commonly from Alaska, Siberia and China's Yunnan province. So-called shinkawa is a potentially confusing merchant's term. Shin means new, and thus shinkawa is best translated faux-kawa, because the woods so described are biologically unrelated to kawa.
Stones.
A full set of Go stones, goishi, usually contains 181 black stones and 180 white ones. A 19x19 grid has 361 points, so there are enough stones to cover the board, and black gets the extra odd stone because that player goes first. Traditional Japanese stones are double convex, and made of clamshell, white, and slate, black. The classic slate is Nashiguro stone mined in Wakayama Prefecture and the clamshell from the Hamaguri clam. However, due to a scarcity in the Japanese supply of this clam, the stones are most often made of shells harvested from Mexico. Historically, the most prized stones were made of jade, often given to the reigning emperor as a gift. In China, the game is traditionally played with single convex stones made of a composite called yunzi. The material comes from Yunnan province and is made by sintering a proprietary and trade secret mixture of mineral compounds derived from the local stone. This process dates to the Tang dynasty and, after the knowledge was lost in the 1920s during the Chinese Civil War, was rediscovered in the 1960s by the now state-run Yunzi Company. The material is praised for its colors, its pleasing sound as compared to glass or to synthetics such as melamine, and its lower cost as opposed to other materials such as slate shell. The term yunzi can also refer to a single convex stone made of any material. However, most English-language Go suppliers specify yunzi as a material and single convex as a shape to avoid confusion, as stones made of yunzi are also available in double convex while synthetic stones can be either shape. Traditional stones are made so that black stones are slightly larger in diameter than white. This is to compensate for the optical illusion created by contrasting colors that would make equal-sized white stones appear larger on the board than black stones.
Bowls.
The bowls for the stones are shaped like a flattened sphere with a level underside. The lid is loose-fitting and upturned before play to receive stones captured during the game. Chinese bowls are slightly larger, and a little more rounded, a style known generally as Go-Seijin. Japanese kitani bowls tend to have a shape closer to that of the bowl of a snifter glass, such as for brandy. The bowls are usually made of turned wood. Mulberry is the traditional material for Japanese bowls, but is very expensive. Wood from the Chinese jujube date tree, which has a lighter color, it is often stained, and slightly more visible grain pattern, is a common substitute for rosewood, and traditional for Go-Seijin style bowls. Other traditional materials used for making Chinese bowls include lacquered wood, ceramics, stone and woven straw or rattan. The names of the bowl shapes, Go-Seijin, and Kitani, were introduced in the last quarter of the 20th century by the professional player Janice Kim as homage to two 20th-century professional Go players by the same names, of Chinese and Japanese nationality, respectively, who are referred to as the fathers of modern Go.
Modern and low-cost alternatives.
In clubs and at tournaments, where large numbers of sets must be purchased and maintained by one organization, expensive traditional sets are not usually used. For these situations, table boards are usually used instead of floorboards, and are either made of a lower-cost wood such as spruce or bamboo, or are flexible mats made of vinyl or leather that can be rolled up. In such cases, the stones are usually made of glass, plastic or resin, such as melamine or bakelite, rather than slate and shell. Bowls are often made of plastic or inexpensive wood. Common novice Go sets are all-inclusive kits made of particle board or plywood, with plastic or glass stones, that either fold up to enclose the stone containers or have pull-out drawers to keep stones. In relative terms, these sets are inexpensive, costing $20 minus $40 depending on component quality, and thus are popular with casual Go players. Magnetic sets are also available either as portable travel sets or in larger sizes for educational purposes.
Playing technique and etiquette.
The traditional way to place a Go stone is to first take one from the bowl, gripping it between the index and middle fingers, with the middle finger on top, and then placing it directly on the desired intersection. One can also place a stone on the board and then slide it into position under appropriate circumstances, where it doesn't move any other stones. It is considered respectful towards one's opponent to place one's first stone in the upper right-hand corner. It is considered poor manners to run one's fingers through one's bowl of unplayed stones, as the sound, however soothing to the player doing this, can be disturbing to one's opponent. Similarly, clacking a stone against another stone, the board, or the table or floor is also discouraged. However, it is permissible to emphasize select moves by striking the board more firmly than normal, thus producing a sharp clack.
Time control.
A game of Go may be timed using a game clock. Formal time controls were introduced in the professional game during the 1920s and were controversial. Adjournments and sealed moves began to be regulated in the 1930s. Go tournaments use a number of different time control systems. All common systems envisage a single main period of time for each player for the game, but they vary on the protocols for continuation, in overtime, after a player has finished that time allowance. The most widely used time control system is the so-called Byo-Wyoming system. The top professional Go matches have timekeepers so that the players do not have to press their own clocks. Two widely used variants of the Byo-Wyoming system are Standard Byo-Wyoming, After the main time is depleted, a player has a certain number of time periods, typically around 30 seconds. After each move, the number of full time periods that the player took, often 0, is subtracted. For example, if a player has 3 30-second time periods and takes 30 or more, but less than 60 seconds to make a move, they lose 1 time period. With 60 to 89 seconds, they lose 2 time periods, and so on. If, however, they take less than 30 seconds, the timer simply resets without subtracting any periods. Using up the last period means that the player has lost on time. Canadian Biowyoming. After using all of their main time, a player must make a certain number of moves within a certain period of time, such as 20 moves within 5 minutes. If the time period expires without the required number of stones having been played, then the player has lost on time.
Notation and recording games.
Go games are recorded with a simple coordinate system. This is comparable to algebraic chess notation, except that Go stones do not move and thus require only one coordinate per turn. Coordinate systems include purely numerical, 4 to 4 point, hybrid, K3, and purely alphabetical. The smart game format uses alphabetical coordinates internally, but most editors represent the board with hybrid coordinates as this reduces confusion. The Japanese word keifu is sometimes used to refer to a game record. In Unicode, Go stones are encoded in the block miscellaneous symbols. U+2686. White circle with dot right, HTML, and number 9862, U+2687. White circle with 2 dots, HTML, and number 9863, U+2688. Black circle with dot right, HTML, and number 9864, U+2689. Black circle with 2 dots, HTML, and number 9865.
Computers and Go. Nature of the game.
In combinatorial game theory terms, Go is a zero-sum, perfect information, partisan, deterministic strategy game, putting it in the same class as chess, checkers, drafts, and reversi, Othello. However, it differs from these in its gameplay. Although the rules are simple, the practical strategy is extremely complex. The game emphasizes the importance of balance on multiple levels and has internal tensions. To secure an area of the board, it is good to play moves close together. However, to cover the largest area, one needs to spread out, perhaps leaving weaknesses that can be exploited. Playing too low, close to the edge, secures insufficient territory and influence, yet playing too high, far from the edge, allows the opponent to invade. It has been claimed that Go is the most complex game in the world due to its vast number of variations in individual games. Its large board and lack of restrictions allow great scope in strategy and expression of players' individuality. Decisions in one part of the board may be influenced by an apparently unrelated situation in a distant part of the board. Plays made early in the game can shape the nature of conflict 100 moves later. The game complexity of Go is such that describing even elementary strategy fills many introductory books. In fact, numerical estimates show that the number of possible games of Go far exceeds the number of atoms in the observable universe.
Software players.
Go poses a daunting challenge to computer programmers. The strongest computer chess programs defeat the best human players. For example, the Deep Fritz program, running on a laptop, beat reigning world champion Vladimir Kramnik without losing a single game in 2006. The best Go programs managed to reach amateur Dan level. On the small 9x9 board, the computer fares better, and some programs now win a fraction of their 9x9 games against professional players. Many in the field of artificial intelligence consider Go to require more elements that mimic human thought than chess. The reasons why computer programs do not play Go at the professional Dan level include: the number of spaces on the board is much larger, over 5 times the number of spaces on a chessboard, 361 versus 64. On most turns there are many more possible moves in Go than in chess. Throughout most of the game, the number of legal moves stays at around 150 to 250 per turn, and rarely falls below 50. In chess, the average number of moves is 37. Because an exhaustive computer program for Go must calculate and compare every possible legal move in each player turn, its ability to calculate the best plays is sharply reduced when there are a large number of possible moves. Most computer game algorithms, such as those for chess, compute several moves in advance. Given an average of 200 available moves through most of the game, for a computer to calculate its next move by exhaustively anticipating the next 4 moves of each possible play, 2 of its own and 2 of its opponents, it would have to consider more than 320 billion, 3.2 x 1011, possible combinations. To exhaustively calculate the next 8 moves, would require computing 512 quintillion, 5.12 x 1020, possible combinations. As of March 2014, the most powerful supercomputer in the world, NUDT's Tiani-2, can sustain 33.86 petaflops. At this rate, even given an exceedingly low estimate of 10 operations required to assess the value of one play of a stone, Tiani-2 would require 4 hours, to assess all possible combinations of the next 8 moves in order to make a single play. The placement of a single stone in the initial phase can affect the play of the game 100 or more moves later. A computer would have to predict this influence, and it would be unworkable to attempt to exhaustively analyze the next 100 moves. In capture-based games, such as chess, a position can often be evaluated relatively easily, such as by calculating who has a material advantage or more active pieces. In Go, there is often no easy way to evaluate a position. However, a 6-Kaya human can evaluate a position at a glance, to see which player has more territory, and even beginners can estimate the score within 10 points, given time to count it. The number of stones on the board, material advantage, is only a weak indicator of the strength of a position, and a territorial advantage, more empty points surrounded, for one player might be compensated by the opponent's strong positions and influence all over the board. Normally a 3-Dan can easily judge most of these positions. As an illustration, the greatest handicap normally given to a weaker opponent is 9 stones. It was not until August 2008 that a computer won a game against a professional-level player at this handicap. It was the Mogo program, which scored this first victory in an exhibition game played during the U.S. Go Congress.
Software assistance.
An abundance of software is available to support players of the game. This includes programs that can be used to view or edit game records and diagrams, programs that allow the user to search for patterns in the games of strong players, and programs that allow users to play against each other over the Internet. Some web servers provide graphical aids like maps, to aid learning during play. These graphical aids may suggest possible next moves, indicate areas of influence, highlight vital stones under attack and mark stones in Atari or about to be captured. There are several file formats used to store game records, the most popular of which is SGF, short for Smart Game Format. Programs used for editing game records allow the user to record not only the moves, but also variations, commentary and further information on the game. Electronic databases can be used to study life and death situations, Joseki, FuseKey and games by a particular player. Programs are available that give players pattern searching options, which allow players to research positions by searching for high-level games in which similar situations occur. Such software generally lists common follow-up moves that have been played by professionals and gives statistics on win-loss ratio in opening situations. Internet-based Go servers allow access to competition with players all over the world, for real-time and turn-based games. Such servers also allow easy access to professional teaching, with both teaching games and interactive game review being possible.
Video games.
Igo, Kaya Robin Taikyoku, Wiikiji Yulu Panduiju. Lit. Go. 9x9 Grid Matches, a 1987 Go video game that was released exclusively in Japan for the Nintendo Entertainment System.
In popular culture and science. Literature.
Apart from technical literature and study material, Go and its strategies have been the subject of several works of fiction, such as The Master of Go by Nobel Prize-winning author Yasunori Kawabata and The Girl Who Played Go by Shanzar. Other books have used Go as a theme or minor plot device. For example, the novel Shibumi by Trevanian centers around the game and uses Go metaphors, and The Way of Go, 8 Ancient Strategy Secrets for Success in Business and Life by Troy Anderson applies Go strategy to business. Geo, An Asian Paradigm for Business Strategy by Mura Yasuki, a manager with Japan Airlines, uses Go to describe the thinking and behavior of businessmen. Go, referred to as Wakey, features prominently in the Eric van Lustbartner novel Jan. It is also a prominent feature of the book Pop Go by Scarlett Thomas. In the fantasy book series The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan, Go is played by many of the main characters. Go is called Stones, and is considered the most popular board game in the book's world. Jordan uses stones to show military prowess in a character. A majority of the top players in the world are military leaders or high-ranking noblemen. It has been played continuously since at least the Age of Legends, when it was known as Nori, the Path of Daggers, Deceptive Appearances.
Television.
The game makes multiple appearances in the television show Da Vinci's Demons. It made its debut in the third episode of Season 1, titled The Prisoner. In the second season of Star Trek, Enterprise, Trip Tucker plays a game of Go with the Cogenitor. When the Cogenitor wins, Trip comments that nobody else had beaten him in 2 years. The Go proverb, "Strange things happen at the 1-2 point," is used as the episode title of a Season 2 episode of Terminator, The Sarah Connor Chronicles. Cameron is told by Cassandra that he doesn't play chess, but rather plays Go, and he offers to teach her how to play. Later, Cameron explains to Sarah that the proverb means that the usual rules don't always apply. Of particular note is the manga, Japanese comic book, and anime series Hikaru no Go, released in Japan in 1998, which had a large impact in popularizing Go among young players, both in Japan and, as translations were released, abroad. Go Player is a similar animated series about young Go players that aired in China. In the Supernatural television series, Teen Wolf, Go has a pivotal point in the second half of the third season, being referenced multiple times throughout. Stal Stilinski, while in a trance within his mind, plays Go with the Nogitsune on top of the Nemeton and Avoid, the 22nd episode of the season. The board game is referred to later on in the season by Kira and her parents, who were also knowledgeable about the game. The syndicated sci-fi series Andromeda has several characters playing the game in different episodes. Go is used as a device for criminal profiling in the pilot episode of Criminal Minds, Extreme Aggressor. In the Diagnosis, Murder episode Deadly Games, Dr. Sloan plays Go with a suspected killer to determine his strategy.
Film.
Similarly, Go has been used as a subject or plot device in film, such as P, A Beautiful Mind, Tron, Legacy, and The Go Master, a biopic of Go professional Go Seijin. In King Hu's wuxia film The Valiant Ones, the characters are color-coded as Go pieces, black or other dark shades for the Chinese, white for the Japanese invaders. Go boards and stones are used by the characters to keep track of soldiers prior to battle, and the battles themselves are structured like a game of Go. In the film Pi, mathematician and number theorist Maximilian Max Cohen periodically plays Go with his mentor, Sol Robeson. The characters each use the game as a model for their view of the universe. Sol says that the game is a microcosm of an extremely complex and chaotic world, while Max asserts that patterns can be found in the complexity of its variations. Actors Sean Gullett and Mark Margolis both spent many hours learning the game at the Brooklyn Go Club, and had the help of a Go consultant, Don Weiner, misspelled as Dan, for the film.
Pop culture.
The corporation and brand Atari was named after the Go term. The pop art artist Arman was a Go player. But he stopped when he realized that Go had gained the upper hand over his art. He said in the French book Arman, un entretien d'artiste that the picture of him published in the Go newspaper was more important for him than his exhibition at the Cebu Museum.
Psychology.
A 2004 review of literature by Fernand Gobet, De Voogd and Retschitsky shows that relatively little scientific research has been carried out on the psychology of Go, compared with other traditional board games such as chess and mancala. Computer Go research has shown that given the large search tree, knowledge and pattern recognition are more important in Go than in other strategy games, such as chess. A study of the effects of age on Go playing has shown that mental decline is milder with strong players than with weaker players. According to the review of Gobet and colleagues, the pattern of brain activity observed with techniques such as PET and fMRI does not show large differences between Go and chess. On the other hand, a study by Xi and Kuan Chen al. Showed greater activation in the right hemisphere among Go players than among chess players. There is some evidence to suggest a correlation between playing board games and reduced risk of Alzheimer's disease and dementia.
Comparisons.
Go begins with an empty board. It is focused on building from the ground up, nothing to something, with multiple, simultaneous battles leading to a point-based win. Chess is tactical rather than strategic, as the predetermined strategy is to kill one individual piece, the king. This comparison has also been applied to military and political history, with Scott Borman's 1969 book The Protracted Game exploring the strategy of the Communist Party of China in the Chinese Civil War through the lens of Go. A similar comparison has been drawn among Go, chess and backgammon, perhaps the three oldest games that enjoy worldwide popularity. Backgammon is a man versus fate contest, with chance playing a strong role in determining the outcome. Chess, with rows of soldiers marching forward to capture each other, embodies the conflict of man versus man. Because the handicap system tells Go players where they stand relative to other players, an honestly ranked player can expect to lose about half of their games. Therefore, Go can be seen as embodying the quest for self-improvement, man versus self.